Imagine just stepping into a time machine.
Okay.
All right, and you go back to 2019, and you tell someone that in just 7 years, a basic fast food combo meal will cost more than an hour of minimum wage labor.
Yeah, they wouldn't believe you.
Exactly. Imagine telling them that the $5 footlong is just a total myth now, that the dollar menu is a relic of history.
Just completely gone.
Completely gone. And that entire swaths of America's most recognizable drive-thrus are just, well, they're sitting abandoned.
Like ghost towns.
Right. They would look at you like the economy had completely collapsed. But the truth is, and this is what we're looking at today, we're watching the American fast food industry enter this massive, terrifyingly complex death spiral right now in 2026.
It really is a profound structural decay. And I think we're so conditioned to think of business failures as these sudden dramatic events.
Oh,
right?
like a scandal overnight.
Yeah, or a massive technological disruption, like the way streaming just obliterated video rentals almost instantly.
Oh, blockbuster. Yeah.
Right. But what we are witnessing in the fast food sector, it's a slow motion unraveling. It is happening in plain sight on like every major intersection in the country you live in.
Yeah.
Yet the root causes are buried so deep within complex supply chains and these really opaque franchise agreements.
So, welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are taking a long, hard look at a phenomenon that is literally, physically changing the landscape of the country you live in.
It really is.
We are going to trace the exact anatomy of this collapse. So we're constructing a clear narrative that starts with the invisible spike in raw material prices.
Which nobody saw coming.
Right, and ends with the permanent padlocks on the doors of America's biggest chains. Our guide for this journey is an incredibly detailed YouTube video transcript from the channel America Unfiltered.
Great channel.
Yeah, really thorough. And the video is ominously titled, Fast Food's Death Spiral, The Numbers Don't Lie.
And they really don't. The numbers are brutal.
They are. And just a quick note for you listening before we start. The source material, it gets into some highly charged territory. You'll hear claims of, like, corporate greed, severe labor disputes, messy franchise lawsuits.
Lots of finger pointing.
Tons of it. So our goal here isn't to validate one political or economic side over another.
Right, we're acting as analysts here.
Exactly. We are going to impartially report the claims made by the franchises, the employees, the executives, and just look at the data itself to understand exactly how this machine broke down.
Because the machine is fundamentally broken. And if we want to understand the end point, the thousands of closed stores you drive past, we have to start at the cellular level of the business model.
Okay, let's unpack this, because I like to think of the fast food industry like a massive Jenga tower.
Ooh, I like that analogy.
Right. For decades, it stood tall, built on these super steady blocks of cheap ingredients and high volume. But in 2026, we are literally watching the final blocks get pulled out.
Yeah, and long before the drive-thru started shutting their windows, the math fundamentally broke down at the supply chain level. Fast food has always operated in what we call razor-thin margins.
Meaning they don't make much per burger.
Exactly. It's an ecosystem entirely dependent on high volume and absolute predictability. You make pennies of profit on a single item, but you sell millions of them.
Right.
So when the foundational cost of your core product skyrockets, the business model doesn't just bend, it shatters.
Okay, so let's look at the raw data from the source, because this initial shockwave was entirely invisible to the average consumer. Let's look at Popeyes.
Ah, the chicken sandwich wars.
Yes. Back in 2019, they launched that chicken sandwich that literally had people lining up around city blocks. People were fighting over them.
It was cultural madness.
It was. But the reality today, according to the source, cooking oil prices climbed by 32%, and the cost of chicken itself jumped nearly 28%.
And that is a lethal combination. I mean, for a brand that essentially sells only chicken fried in oil.
Right, that's the whole menu.
A near 30% increase across your two primary raw materials is catastrophic. You have to remember, corporate offices plan their promotions, their menus, national ad campaigns. They plan these years in advance.
Oh, wow. Years.
Oh, absolutely. They build financial projections assuming a relatively stable cost of goods. So when the bedrock of that projection moves by 30%, your margin of error is instantly erased.
It's just gone.
Poof, gone.
And it's not isolated to poultry either. The source notes that Wendy's saw beef prices climb roughly 24%. But the one that completely reframes the scale of this issue for me is Little Caesars.
The pizza data is fascinating.
It's wild. According to the data, cheese prices are up nearly 40% since 2023. and pepperoni has hit record highs. I want to pause on that because a pizza is essentially baked dough covered in cheese and pepperoni.
Precisely. And cheese is heavily reliant on the dairy market, which is incredibly sensitive to, well, everything, from feed prices to fuel costs for transport.
Right, the trucks to move the milk.
Exactly. And cheese is already the most expensive component of a pizza by weight. If that single ingredient jumps 40%, the cost to produce the core product fundamentally changes. And what's fascinating here is that this volatility isn't restricted to heavy, greasy comfort food.
No, it absolutely isn't. The source brings up salad and go.
Which had a great model initially.
Yeah, they were positioned as this modern, healthy, fast, and affordable alternative. But they got hammered just as hard, if not harder. Roma lettuce surged 40%, and the cost of avocados literally tripled.
Tripling the cost of a core garnish just destroys the unit economics of a salad. You cannot run a volume-based business when an avocado costs 3 times as much on a Tuesday as it did on a Monday.
You just can't plan for
The
that.
whole system falls out of alignment.
But, I want to challenge this narrative slightly because I think it's what anyone listening is probably wondering right now. We all see inflation at the grocery store, right?
Yeah.
We all feel the squeeze when we buy a carton of eggs or a pound of ground beef. Why is this a death sentence for fast food specifically? People still have to eat, and grocery stores seem to be weathering the storm just fine by adjusting their prices.
That's a great question. The difference lies in the explicit promise that fast food makes to the consumer. A grocery store is essentially a utility.
Like water or electricity.
Right. You go there to buy raw materials, and you inherently accept that global market forces change the prices of those raw materials. If the price of beef goes up, you might grumble, but you buy it, or you switch to pork.
You just adapt.
Yes. But fast food's entire identity, its core brand proposition for the last 70 years, is tied to being the cheapest, most convenient option available. It is an unwritten social contract.
Oh, I see. I look at it like an airplane losing cabin pressure.
Okay, I like that.
Like a grocery store can slowly pass the cost along, adjusting a few cents here and there because they operate in an open environment where you have choices. But fast food is this enclosed, highly pressurized cabin.
Very pressurized.
The singular promise is cheap and fast. The moment you breach that promise and raise prices to cut out those 40% spikes in cheese and lettuce, all the oxygen gets sucked out of the room. The customer instantly feels the pressure change and just bails out.
That analogy holds up perfectly when we look at the second stage of this collapse, which is the death of the value menu.
RIP the value menu.
Seriously. Because the chains simply couldn't absorb the massive increases in raw materials, they had to pass that burden on to the consumer. And in doing so, they effectively destroyed their core brand identities.
Yeah.
This is where the structural decay becomes visible to the public. The invisible supply chain shockwave finally hits the menu board.
And the numbers from the source are brutal. Let's look at McDonald's, right?
Yeah.
The undisputed giant of the industry.
The golden arches.
Yeah. In 2019, a Big Mac was $3.99. The source notes that by 2026, it is approaching $7.49 in many markets. Combo meals are averaging $11.79.
It's wild.
We are talking about nearly $12 for a meal handed to you in a paper bag.
Think about the psychological barrier of crossing the $10 mark for a drive-thru meal. Fast food used to be what economists call an affordable indulgence.
A little treat.
Exactly. It was the safety net for the working class. It was the default option for a broke college student or the easy out for an exhausted parent on a Tuesday night.
Right.
But when a fast food meal costs $12, it fundamentally changes how that meal is categorized in the consumer's mind. It moves from a casual convenience to a calculated financial decision.
The data backs that up completely, too. The source explicitly points out that low-income consumers are sharply pulling back, to the point where even McDonald's executives have had to acknowledge the drop in foot traffic.
Which they rarely do.
Exactly. But it's not just them. The legendary Little Caesars $5 hot and ready, the ultimate safety net for a tight family budget, it's now $8 to $9 in many cities.
The name of the product was practically the price itself.
I know.
When you raise the price of a $5 product to $9, that is an 80% price increase on a product whose entire marketing identity is based on a specific, immovable price point. It induces this sense of economic whiplash in the customer.
You see the exact same whiplash at Subway. The $5 footlong was practically a cultural anthem. It was a jingle burned into the brains of millions of Americans.
I can still hear it.
Me too. Today,
Yeah.
it rings up at $10.79 or more. And Taco Bell, the undisputed king of the late-night cheap run, has completely vanished its $1 cravings menu.
Just gone.
A basic $5.99 combo is now $9.50. And the source points out a massive demographic shift happening as a result. Gen Z and millennials are actively fleeing these brands.
Where are they going?
They are going to dollar stores and buying frozen grocery food instead.
Wow. If we connect this to the broader economic picture, the value proposition of fast food has just evaporated. If you are going to spend $12 to $15 on a meal, you can go to a fast casual place like Chipotle.
Right. Get actual real food.
Yeah, or even a sit-down casual dining restaurant like Applebee's or Chili's, which are aggressively offering lunch specials in that exact price range. Why sit in a drive-thru line for a lukewarm burger when for $2 more you can sit at a table and have a server bring you a higher quality meal on a real plate?
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Incredibly frustrating for the consumer. It's not just the sticker shock. The source outlines this sort of double whammy effect. As prices are going up, the portions and the quality are simultaneously shrinking.
The dreaded concept of shrinkflation.
Exactly that. But the execution feels almost insulting to the customer at this point. The source highlights this perfectly with Subway. While the price of the footlong effectively doubled, customers and industry analysts are reporting declining bread quality, highly inconsistent ingredients, and visibly shrinking portions.
Yeah, it's very noticeable.
One analyst in the source bluntly called Subway's promise of freshness little more than an illusion. And we see it at Wendy's, too. The famous 4 for $4 deal is now close to $7.99. But alongside the price hike, customers are taking to social media to mock shrinking burgers and limp fries. Even the Frosty has doubled in price.
It creates a deep, lingering sense of betrayal.
That's a good word for it. Betrayal.
It's one thing to ask a consumer to pay more for the exact same high-quality product they remember from their childhood to account for inflation, right?
People understand inflation.
Right. It is another thing entirely to ask them to pay twice as much for a product that is demonstrably worse, smaller, and served slower. This destroys brand loyalty overnight. You cannot market your way out of a price point that your customer physically cannot afford, especially when the product itself is degrading.
Taco Bell tried exactly that, didn't they?
Right.
The source notes they tried to combat the loss of their younger demographics by bringing back discontinued favorites, like the Mexican pizza.
Oh, to generate hype.
Yeah, to get people excited again. But the source says it barely moved the needle. Customers aren't looking for nostalgia or marketing gimmicks right now. They're financially exhausted, their budgets are stretched, paper thin, and they just want consistency and value.
Which brings us to the third stage of our narrative timeline. If the raw materials cost too much and the customers stop coming because the prices are too high and the quality is too low, the local revenue stream dries up.
Makes sense.
And this creates a vicious civil war within the brands themselves. We enter the conflict between corporate mandates and franchise reality.
I want to spend some serious time here because this is the dynamic that most people misunderstand, I think. When you pull up to a Burger King or a Dairy Queen, you assume you are buying food from a massive, multi-billion-dollar, faceless corporation.
Right, but you aren't.
Exactly. You are almost always buying food from a local small business owner, a franchisee.
Yes, and the corporate entity, the parent company, makes its money by taking a percentage of the gross sales, the top line, regardless of whether the local owner actually turns a profit on the bottom line.
Let's break down the math of that because it is the exact mechanism driving this collapse. The local owner is bleeding out. They are paying 40% more for cheese, 30% more for oil, and their foot traffic is down by double digits because customers are furious about $12 combo meals.
So their profits are vanishing.
Right. And instead of throwing these local owners a lifeline, the source material shows that corporate leadership actually squeezed them harder.
It is a desperate attempt by corporate to maintain their own profitability and appease their shareholders, completely at the expense of the people actually running the restaurants.
Wow.
They enforce mandates that look great on a quarterly earnings call, but are practically lethal to a franchisee who is barely staying afloat.
The Dairy Queen example in the source perfectly illustrates this. Corporate forced, expensive, mandatory modernizations on their franchisees. We're talking integrated mobile ordering systems, massive digital menu boards, extensive remodeling.
None of which is cheap.
No. These upgrades cost tens of thousands of dollars per store. Meanwhile, because of inflation and lost customers, the local owner's net profit margins had fallen below 4%.
Imagine being that small business owner. Your profit margin is less than 4 pennies on every dollar you make.
It's nothing.
And a corporate executive sitting in an office tower hundreds of miles away mandates that you must take out a high-interest loan for $40,000 to install digital screens that you don't need to serve a customer base that is actively shrinking.
It's insane.
It is an arbitrary mandate entirely disconnected from the operational reality on the ground.
While I was reading through the source, I couldn't help but think of it like a landlord, like forcing a struggling, nearly bankrupt tenant to install a luxury crystal chandelier in the living room, while the actual roof of the house is caving in from water damage.
That is exactly what it's like.
The priorities are just violently mismatched. And the result of that kind of pressure is inevitable. The franchisees just break.
We see that breakpoint clearly with Burger King. The source details how franchisees across Ohio, Michigan, and Florida are physically filing for bankruptcy.
Like completely shutting down operations.
Yes. They are reporting consecutive months of deep negative cash flow. And in their legal filings, they are openly citing corporate mismanagement and, quote, unchecked corporate greed.
Wow.
They begged for corporate intervention, for relief on marketing fees or royalty payments. But it never came.
And we see an even more extreme version of this franchisee rebellion with Wahlburgers. This was supposed to be the massive celebrity-fueled premium burger experience driven by Mark Wahlberg's Hollywood star power.
Right, a high-profile brand with massive initial capital. But the source indicates that the reality check has been harsh, the core issue. A family meal at Wahlburgers now averages around $58.
$58 for casual burgers and fries.
It's staggering.
In an economy where grocery bills have jumped 20% across the board, the source notes that the middle class is simply not eager to pay near fine dining prices for a casual burger, even with a famous name attached to the branding.
Obviously not.
So how do the local owners react when the promised customer base doesn't materialize?
They file lawsuits. Multiple franchise owners sued the parent company, alleging breach of contract. They claimed that corporate vastly exaggerated the brand's potential, completely failed to deliver adequate ongoing corporate support, and basically just left them stranded.
They left them to drown.
Yep. The aggressive expansion plans vanished, the social media marketing flatlined, and now many of these locations have been reduced to operating as ghost kitchens.
I want to pause on the concept of ghost kitchens, actually, because the source ties this directly to another massive point of friction: the delivery apps.
Oh, DoorDash, Uber Eats, Grubhub.
Exactly. Corporate leadership across the board, and the source specifically calls out Jack in the Box and Wendy's here, they aggressively pushed these delivery apps as the ultimate future of fast food. They mandated that their franchisees integrate with them. But the math for the local owner is a nightmare, isn't it?
The math is fundamentally broken. Delivery apps charge enormous commissions to the restaurant, sometimes ranging from 20% to 30% of the total order value.
30%.
Let's go back to our earlier numbers. If a franchisee's profit margin is already hovering around 4 to 5% after paying for labor, rent, and skyrocketing food costs,
Right.
a 30% commission from an app instantly turns every single delivery order into a significant financial loss. The more food the franchise sells on the app, the faster they bleed cash.
It's the ultimate corporate trap. Corporate pushes the delivery apps because every sale on DoorDash increases the top-line gross revenue, which means corporate gets a bigger royalty check. But the local owner takes the 30% fee on the bottom line. So let's summarize the pressure cooker here. The ingredients are too expensive, the customers are leaving, and corporate is forcing you to buy digital signs and take massive losses on delivery fees.
Which leads us directly into the fourth stage of the collapse: operational meltdowns.
The actual collapse.
Yes. When the financial strain becomes too great, it eventually breaks the physical operations. This is the stage where the business leaves the realm of being merely unprofitable and enters the realm of being non-functional.
Right. It just stops.
The actual machinery of the restaurant simply stops working.
You know, you think of these massive national brands as being invincible fixtures of society. But the source outlines scenarios where the house of cards just completely flattens. Boston Market is the prime example here.
Oh, Boston Market?
The source doesn't just describe a few underperforming stores closing. It describes a total corporate collapse. The company was literally evicted from its own New Jersey corporate headquarters. Evicted. Over $1.2 million in unpaid rent. At the same time, state labor departments were issuing severe wage violation notices because employees simply weren't getting paid for hours they had already worked.
But the most shocking detail regarding Boston Market was the supply chain failure in 2024. The entire backbone of their menu, the rotisserie chicken, vanished.
Wait, really? The chicken vanished?
Yes. The source details how the supply chain collapsed because major poultry suppliers severed ties with the company over millions of dollars in aging, unpaid invoices.
Oh, wait, I have to step in here and play devil's advocate for a second.
Mhm.
How does a giant like Boston Market, a brand that used to have locations in seemingly every shopping plaza in America,
Mm.
just run out of money to pay for chicken?
It seems impossible, right?
Yeah. If McDonald's and other parent companies are still posting billions in global revenue, how does a massive brand let an invoice age for 90 days until the farmers literally refuse to drop off the food?
It requires an understanding of how these companies are structured behind the scenes, specifically regarding private equity and corporate debt. Okay. Many of these legacy fast food brands were purchased by private equity firms over the last decade. The standard playbook is what's called a leveraged buyout.
A leveraged buyout.
Right. The firm buys the restaurant chain, but they use massive amounts of debt to finance the purchase, and they place that debt onto the restaurant chain's balance sheet.
Wait, so the restaurant itself owes the money used to buy it?
Exactly. The chain is now saddled with massive mandatory interest payments every single month. In a booming economy with high foot traffic, they can cover the debt and still operate.
They can just outrun the debt.
Yes. But when inflation hits, when raw materials spike 30%, and when customer traffic drops by 70%, which the source notes happen with Boston Market since 2019,
70% drop. Wow.
the incoming cash isn't enough to cover the basic operating costs plus that massive unyielding debt payment.
It's a game of financial musical chairs, and the music stops.
It becomes a triage situation. Management has to choose. Do we pay the high interest debt? Do we pay the corporate landlord? Or do we pay the poultry supplier?
And they start paying the supplier.
Eventually, the cash flow just completely dries up and you enter cash flow insolvency. You cannot sell rotisserie chicken if you cannot afford to pay the farmers who raise the chickens. The business ceases to function at a cellular level.
That completely reframes how I look at those empty storefronts. It's not just a drop in popularity, it's a structural financial implosion. And we see operational meltdowns manifesting in other highly visible ways, too. Look at McDonald's.
Right.
The source highlights a massive 2024 E. coli outbreak linked to onions that hospitalized over 100 people across multiple states.
Which is a devastating blow to the most important currency a fast food brand has: consumer trust.
The source states that this outbreak fundamentally destroyed trust in their consistency and safety. And when you look at the broader context we just discussed, it makes sense. When a massive system is cutting corners, slashing labor, and squeezing suppliers to save pennies and cover debt, food safety protocols are often the first invisible casualties.
Without a doubt.
And then there are the technological meltdowns. The source notes that McDonald's ambitious rollout of AI drive-thrus and automated kiosks resulted in widespread technical glitches.
It's the result of trying to solve a labor cost issue with immature technology. They attempted to replace human workers with AI to save on hourly wages, but the tech simply wasn't ready for the chaotic environment of a live drive-thru.
It never is.
No. It frustrated the customer, slowed down the queue, and actively alienated older demographics who rely on human interaction. Ultimately, it cost them more in lost goodwill and barged orders than it ever saved in labor.
Speaking of human workers, the source returns to Salad and Go to highlight an operational nightmare on the human capital side. We already talked about their tripling avocado costs.
Right.
But the source points out that heavy employee workloads, coupled with incredibly low pay in a high-stress environment, led to an annual employee turnover rate exceeding 150%.
Let's contextualize what a 150% turnover rate actually means for a physical restaurant. It means that over the course of a single calendar year, a manager has had to entirely replace their entire staff and then replace half of them all over again.
How do you maintain any standard of operations when your team changes every few weeks?
You don't. You just don't. As the source points out, that constant churn destroys any hope of consistent service. A franchisee spends all their remaining time and resources simply interviewing and training new people.
Who are just going to leave anyway?
Exactly. Those new hires inevitably leave a month later because the job is too demanding and the pay isn't competitive with other entry-level jobs in the area. You can't maintain speed of service, you can't maintain food quality, and the customer experience degrades rapidly.
So just tracing the narrative so far, right?
Mm-hmm.
The foundational raw materials exploded in cost, forcing chains to double their prices. That sticker shock drove the core customer base away. Yeah. Corporate entities panicking over lost revenue, squeezed their local franchisees with expensive mandates and delivery app fees, causing widespread bankruptcies. The sheer lack of operating cash and high labor turnover then led to massive operational failures, like unpaid bills, E. coli outbreaks, AI glitches, and hollowed-out ghost kitchens.
Which brings us to the fifth stage of the narrative, which is perhaps the most profound sociological shift in the source material, the cultural erasure.
The cultural erasure.
Right. This ceases to be just a story about corporate balance sheets and debt structures. The operational collapse we just outlined leads directly to a massive shift in consumer behavior, effectively erasing entire cultural institutions from the American lifestyle.
The loss of the third place.
Yes,
The
exactly.
places that weren't your home and weren't your workplace, where you could just exist cheaply. Let's look at the night shift economy, the American night. Jack in the Box used to absolutely rule the late-night hours.
They really did.
The source says their cheap tacos, milkshakes, and 24-hour illuminated drive-thrus made them the default stop after midnight for shift workers and teenagers. But over the last few years, late-night traffic plummeted from 35% of their total sales to just 18%.
A near halving of their core audience. And the affordability simply vanished. When the combo that used to cost $6 now costs closer to $10 or $11, the casual, impulsive late-night run is no longer justifiable for someone working a late shift wage.
It's just too much.
But the source also points to external societal factors. Rising crime rates in certain urban areas forced many locations to abandon 24-hour service altogether for the safety of their skeleton crews. The one unique feature that set them apart from competitors was just erased.
We see the exact same tragic arc with Denny's. Denny's was the ultimate late-night haven.
Oh, absolutely.
The source paints such a vivid picture of what it used to be. A brightly lit sanctuary welcoming exhausted long-haul truck drivers, broke college students cramming for exams, or anyone just burning the midnight oil.
Right.
But acute staffing shortages and rising operational costs have made 24-hour operations a massive financial liability. The legendary 3.0 a.m. crowd has completely disappeared.
The source provides a vital piece of context regarding changing demographics, too. Younger generations simply want different things. The cultural palette has shifted.
Meaning what exactly?
Gen Z and younger millennials aren't seeking out heavy, greasy breakfast platters at 2 in the morning. They gravitate toward cleaner aesthetics, smoothies, protein bowls, fast Wi-Fi. Denny's found itself paralyzed by soaring food costs while the cultural tide just rolled right past them.
The impact this has on small-town America is genuinely heartbreaking to think about. The source explicitly points out that in many Midwestern towns, a Denny's wasn't just a restaurant, it was an informal community hub.
It was a gathering place.
Yeah. It was where the local retirees met for coffee every Tuesday, where the high school football team went after a Friday game. It provided steady, reliable jobs and affordable meals. Now those neon signs are dark, and the parking lots sit entirely silent.
It is the loss of the affordable indulgence on a communal scale. Think about the cultural weight of Pizza Hut.
Oh, the iconic red booths.
Yes.
Stained glass lamps, the checkered tablecloths. The source says going to Pizza Hut in the 80s and 90s was an actual event, a destination for families, not just a quick meal.
But that specific dine-in model, which required massive square footage, a dedicated wait staff, high utility bills, and constant maintenance, it became an unbearable financial weight. The real estate was too expensive to justify the shrinking margins.
And the source notes? They completely lost the modern delivery war to app-centric platforms like Domino's and Papa John's. Now those massive dining rooms sit totally empty. The salad bars are dismantled and dusty. The source says it feels like a snapshot of a simpler, more communal America slowly fading away.
We see a similar cultural obsolescence facing KFC. The source explicitly states that younger demographics increasingly view KFC as an outdated relic.
A relic, wow.
When given the choice, they overwhelmingly prefer competitors like Chick-fil-A or Raising Cane's, which offer cleaner, modern store designs, highly focused menus, and a vastly superior customer experience.
So what does this all mean? The nostalgia element the source touches on here is heavy. KFC used to be synonymous with a Sunday family ritual. Passing around a bucket of chicken was a cultural touchstone.
It was.
Now, because of the staggering price increases, the source says families are actively opting to buy frozen fried chicken or pre-made deli platters from big box grocery stores to celebrate a payday.
It's a huge shift.
It is. I want you, the listener, to just reflect on your own memories of these places for a second. The distinct smell of the Pizza Hut dining room, the bright, comforting lights of a Denny's on a lonely highway at 2 a.m., and realize how totally alien those concepts feel in the brutal economic reality of 2026. The economy hasn't just killed a business model, it has fundamentally altered the American lifestyle.
If the culture has indeed moved on, the local operators are bankrupt, the prices are unsustainably high, and the fundamental ingredients are too expensive.
Oh.
It leads us to the inevitable conclusion. What is the final physical outcome of all this structural decay?
The final outcome is the end of the line, the final stage. The permanent closures, the culmination of every single misstep, price hike, and lawsuit we've discussed. The doors lock forever.
Forever.
And the sheer scale of the numbers provided in the source material is breathtaking. Let's just walk through the raw data so you can feel the true weight of this collapse.
These are not isolated, underperforming regional stores. This is a mass extinction event in commercial real estate.
Let's start with Subway. The source reports a staggering 3,200 closures since 2021. Their entire brand identity as the smart, healthy, affordable choice was completely eroded by a combination of aggressive, cannibalizing overexpansion and crippling inflation.
3,200 locations.
It's massive.
Think about the sheer volume of empty strip mall units and corner lots that represents across the country.
KFC, nearly 500 closures in just 2 years. Pizza Hut, over 400 closures recently. Burger King, over 400 closures as well.
That is nearly 1,000 massive, purpose-built restaurant buildings sitting vacant between just 3 major legacy brands.
It keeps going. Dairy Queen. Over 200 rural locations shut down. The source notes that in many of these small towns, Dairy Queen was literally the only dessert spot or gathering place around.
The only one.
Denny's has 180 locations slated to close. Wendy's, 140 closures.
This raises an important question, though. If we consider the commercial real estate implications, we are talking about a permanent scarring of our towns and cities.
What do you mean by scarring?
Well, these aren't generic office spaces that can be easily repurposed. A Pizza Hut architecturally looks like a Pizza Hut.
With the roof, yeah.
A Burger King with its specific industrial kitchen layout and wraparound drive-thru lane is incredibly difficult and expensive to convert into a boutique clothing store or a dentist's office. They become, effectively, zombie real estate.
It paints such a vivid, depressing visual of the daily American commute. You drive down your local highway, and what do you see? Faded plastic logos bleached by the sun after the neon was permanently turned off.
Right.
Dark, windowless ghost kitchens for brands like Wahlburgers that technically exist as a digital button on an app, but have zero physical footprint in the community. You see the rusting, abandoned signs for Boston Market. You see those desperate paper closed for renovations, signs taped to the drive-thru glass that have hung there for over a year, slowly curling at the edges in the heat.
It is the architectural remains of completely defunct economic era.
It is the absolute undeniable realization that the drive-thru fantasy, that deeply ingrained idea that you could always get hot, fast, cheap food handed to you through your car window at any hour of the day or night, is officially dead.
And as we've explored, it didn't die suddenly. It died by 1,000 systemic cuts.
Let's retrace the steps of this journey for you, because seeing the complete picture is vital. We started at the very foundation of the supply chain. A 40% spike in the price of cheese, a 30% jump in chicken, and a tripling in the cost of avocados.
Right.
That invisible systemic shock forced the brands to break their core promise to the public, raising prices drastically, shrinking portions, and killing the sacred $5 footlong and the dollar menu.
Which subsequently alienated the low-income and younger demographics who relied entirely on those specific price points, causing a massive, unrecoverable drop in foot traffic and revenue.
Which triggered widespread corporate panic. To protect their own margins and service their private equity debt, corporates squeezed the local franchisees with expensive tech mandates and crushing delivery app fees, leading directly to a wave of local bankruptcies and bitter lawsuits.
The lack of operating funds at the local level then caused complete operational meltdowns, ranging from unpaid suppliers and 150% employee turnover rates to massive food safety crises like the E. coli outbreak.
All of which culminated in a vast cultural shift, where Americans simply stopped going to these places, effectively erasing iconic community hubs like Denny's and Pizza Hut from our collective routines, leading us finally to the thousands upon thousands of darkened storefronts and empty drive-thrus we see scarring the landscape today.
It is a perfect catastrophic storm. A collision of extreme inflation, corporate mismanagement, crushing debt, and a shifting consumer reality.
And it is so crucial to remember that this isn't just an abstract story about corporate finance, leveraged buyouts, or stock prices. This is fundamentally about the tightening of the average American's budget. It
Exactly.
is about the disappearance of the accessible, reliable, cheap lunch that fueled the working class, students, and families for generations. It fundamentally changes how you budget your week, how you afford to feed your kids after soccer practice on a busy Tuesday, and how you gather with your local community.
It leaves a massive, tangible vacuum in the everyday lives of millions of people. Which leaves me with a final, lingering thought for you to mull over as we conclude this deep dive.
I'm ready. What is the final takeaway?
We've established through all the data that the era of cheap, fast, and familiar food is permanently over. We've established that thousands of these purpose-built buildings are currently sitting empty, slowly decaying in our towns and cities. The fast food giants have retreated, but the human need that created them hasn't vanished.
People still have to eat.
Right, people still only get 30-minute lunch breaks. Exhausted parents still need to feed their families on the way home without spending $60. So the question is, what will rise from the ashes to take their place? When the American working class needs a quick, affordable meal tomorrow, where do they actually go?
That is the defining question of the decade. The tower has fully collapsed, the landscape has changed, and now we just have to wait and see what gets built in the rubble. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the landscape around you, keep looking for the why behind the closed doors, and we will catch you next time.